Well, good afternoon, YouTube. This is Chuck, and it's Tuesday, September 10th, 2024, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And as you can see, I'm sitting out here in the van / recording studio and / paint project. And wanted to bring you a video, and this is one I've been kicking around in my head for, oh golly, 2 weeks or so now. And it's going to be a Bigfoot video, and it's going to be my 100th Bigfoot video. Can you believe I've done 100 of these? And I wanted to make the 100th one kind of special. And so I've kind of been holding off on talking about some other stuff and in order to fit this one in and to tell you about it. So I'm going to talk today about making contact. And those of you that watch the channel for a while know that I've been able to help a few people over the phone, actually, make contact with the Sasquatch people that are either at their homes or out at their favorite research locations. And basically, I've followed a particular blueprint, and I've had a few other people who I've just talked to and have gone out and tried it, and it's worked pretty well. And I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I've got a couple of case studies. If it doesn't get too long, I'll do it as a part of this video, but if not, I'll add it on as another video a little bit later. So basically, the format that I use when somebody starts talking to me and they think they might have Sasquatch people around, and the format I use is I tell them that number one, they need to learn how to clear their mind and to be open to feeling stuff. And sometimes learning how to meditate helps that, and there's various ways to do that. There's YouTube videos on how to do it and how to clear your mind. But basically, our minds are so cluttered with everything going on these days that clearing your mind is sometimes pretty difficult. I know I have a hard time with it myself, but that's probably the number one thing you got to do. And then you got to, of course, you have to have an open mind. You have to be ready. You have to be aware that the Sasquatch people are there, and they're around, and it's not really that hard to make contact with them. But there's certain things you got to do on your part to be able to do that. So once you've done that and you're ready for it, and the other thing too is, and this will sound like a broken record because I've said it many times, and that is that. Before you even go out there, go to my homepage on the channel and click on podcasts and watch the Bigfoot Stuff number 1 through Bigfoot Stuff number 10 under the podcast. And the first 9 will tell you what we've learned, and number 10 will tell you how to go do what we do. And this is kind of an extension of that. And so basically, we're going to assume you've done all that, and now you've got a spot that you go where you're pretty sure that they're around, and you've had all the normal stuff. You've had maybe had a rock thrown towards you, or had sticks breaking, and bushes shaking and stuff like that, and maybe you've even seen an orb or some twinkle lights, and so you're pretty sure they're there. And you don't have to wait until the middle of the night. Generally, they'll be there right after sundown. And usually the ones you're dealing with, the ones that are doing all the bush shaking and maybe giving you a whoop or two or a whistle, they're generally going to be the young ones. They're just kind of reaching out to make contact with you and seeing if you know they're there, or playing with you, seeing if they can scare you. If you scare easy, yeah, they'll intimidate you. They'll sound like the big hairy monsters. And if you go jump in the car and drive away scared to death, then they probably think it's the funniest thing since that they run into. They probably think that's great. They probably get a good laugh out of that. They're not going to hurt you. Let me tell you before I go any further, let me just tell you, if the Sasquatch people wanted to hurt you, they would just walk up to you out of the darkness, and by the time you even realized they were there, there'd be nothing you could do about it. Or the other thing they could do is they could paralyze you. They could reach out and zap you to the point of paralysis where you can't move, and then they could walk right up to you and tear you to pieces. They don't do that. If they wanted to do that, then there'd be no way for you to defend against it. It wouldn't make any difference how many big guns you're carrying or anything. That would just be what happens. But so anyway, let's talk about making contact. You've done all this kind of stuff. Well, you've gone to your area where you think you may have them around you, and it's always best if you're if you're going with just a couple of you, that's fine. Usually, if you get too many of you, that might be a detriment. Probably don't go with over 4 of you. 2 of you is ideal. And part of the thing with 2 of you is that way you can share experiences. If one of you is feeling something and the other one's feeling something, then you're not imagining it in your head, because that's one of the things that we tend to do, is we tend to imagine that we think we're feeling something, and are we doing that to ourselves? Are we fooling ourselves, or is this something that's actually happening? And that's real easy to do if you're out there by yourself. It's a little harder to do if there's more than one of you and you're comparing notes. And if there's 4 of you, and either all 4 of you or maybe 3 of you are getting the same thing, then you can pretty much bet it's legitimate. So anyway, let's you go out there and pay real attention to what you're feeling. You don't have to hike 30 miles into the wilderness. You only have to walk just a little ways away from wherever you park your vehicle, just depending on the topography and the vegetation and all this kind of stuff. So let's say you're in a pretty heavily wooded area and you've got a place to park, and maybe there's a little trail there that you can walk down. And so you wait till just after the sun goes down and before it's real dark, and just walk a little ways away from your car, or even just take a camp chair and just go back there and sit for a little bit and try to clear your mind. So pay real close attention to what you feel. If you start feeling anything at all, a little buzzy feeling in your head, a little pressure feeling in your head, maybe a little buzzy feeling at the base of your neck, or even a little pressure in your chest. All right, don't be alarmed by that. But different people feel it different ways. With me, and I've said it many times before, is I get it as a little pressure feeling right up here in my right temple. And it's kind of like a little pressure feeling with a little electrical charge with it. And that's the way I feel it, and that's the way my partner Kevin feels it the same way, but other members of our group feel it different ways. So when you start feeling that, number one, don't be afraid. And just start to, if there's nobody else around, talk out loud. Don't be afraid to do that. And just say, hey, I feel that. Thank you. If that's you, can you make it stronger? And wait for a little bit. It always takes them 20, maybe 30 seconds to react. But all of a sudden, if they turn that up and that feeling gets stronger, then you know they're there, and you know they're doing that, and you know you're making contact. So one of the next things I tell people to do is ask them, how many of you are here with me right now? Or here with us right now? And pay attention to numbers. And sometimes you'll get the number back before you even get done asking the question. So let's say that you and a partner are out there, and you ask that question, and both of you get the number 5. That number pops into your head out of nowhere. Then that's a pretty good bet that there's 5 of them there, and that number's accurate. So now what have you done? You've not only made contact, you've received mind speak, you've been zapped, you've asked a question, you've got an answer. So the next thing to do, of course, would be to, ask them, can any of you tell me your name? And see if you get a name. Put your mind in neutral and see if you get a name. Now, they don't always do that, but quite often they will. And you're talking, usually at this stage anyway, you're speaking with young ones. Probably late teens, early 20s max, and probably younger than that. And so they're limited in what they're allowed to communicate with you. But they will communicate, and many times they will tell you their name. And so then after that, if they do that, address them by name. And let me tell you one thing about names, is some of the names are similar to our names, and some of the names are quite complicated, and some of them are just to the point we can't even pronounce them. Now, originally I thought that was kind of unusual, but if you look at some of the, pay attention to some of the news reports on some of the people in foreign countries, and we're talking about the, people in, Pakistan or even Ukraine, and some of their names we have a very difficult time pronouncing. So it's not unusual that the Sasquatch people would have names we'd have difficulty pronouncing. So many of the times they will give you a nickname, and they will give you a name, and it might be a very, very simple name, and but it might not be their real formal name. It might be just something that they want you to call them. So, don't be real shy if that happens. But the big thing is to, if they pronounce it a certain way, is try and make sure you pronounce it the same way. In my experience, they like it if you pronounce their name correctly. And if you don't pronounce their name correctly, sometimes they get a little miffed about that. Now, I'll give you an example. I met one whose name was Bizart. And when he first told me what his name was, I pronounced it Bizart, with the emphasis on the first syllable. And he kept telling me over and over again what his name was, probably 10 times before I suddenly realized that what was going on is I was pronouncing it wrong. I had the name correct, I was pronouncing it wrong. And he wanted to pronounce Bizart. And so once I pronounced it correctly, I had quite an interesting visit with him out in western Arizona. I had another one, which ironically was also in western Arizona, and he told me his name was Tamarack. Not Tamarack, Tamarack. He wanted the emphasis on that last syllable. Well, by that time I knew about that, so I didn't, that was not an issue with me. But I've heard a number of cases where people mispronounced a name, and the Sasquatch individual that they were speaking with kind of got a little bit irritated that they weren't pronouncing the name right. I've messed up names myself and been corrected. So anyway, so now once you've got the name, now you've got Zapped, you've got MindSpeak, you've made contact, and you've got a name. So where do you go from there? Well, if it's a spot, let's just say, for example, let's say you live on a farm, or you're on a relative's farm, and they've had forest people living there for probably since long before they lived there. Well, just go back and visit them repeatedly. And sometimes gifting works. I don't necessarily suggest gifting, although sometimes gifting is popular with the little ones, and they like stuff. And what do they like? Well, they like certain food items, and what we found is they get all the vegetable material they ever want, and they get all the meat products they ever want, and so they like sweets. And I don't gift very often, but when I do, I do the little white powdered sugar donuts, because they seem to like those where we're at. And some people say you can leave them marbles and all that kind of stuff, but remember, they don't wear clothes, they don't have pockets. So if you do leave something like that, and they take it, they're probably going to take it someplace and leave it somewhere else. A lot of times they'll leave it right where it's at. They might pick it up and look at it and set it back down in a slightly different place. And so you might go out at your location where you leave it, and we call them gifting stumps often. And you might go out there and find stuff's been rearranged, but no, they didn't take anything. Well, that's like I say, they don't have pockets, and they can't take it home to their room and keep it, put it on the mantle or something, because they don't have any of that. They don't need any of that. So anyway, so continue to be there, be positive, be kind. Try to exude positive energy. If you're having a bad day, it's okay. They understand that we have bad days. And, ask them, if there's anything they can do to cheer you up or something. Another thing not to do is don't get too pushy. They will do things on their own time. It may take a while before they open up to you enough. They'll let you know they're there, but before they take it to the next level in any way, it might be a few months. It might be a year. It all depends. Every family group's a little bit different. And remember, a lot of the elders have been around for a long time, and they know what humans are like, and they might not necessarily care for us all too much. So, don't be, if you go out and try this and you get just a little tidbit, just enough to bring you in and enough to hook you. you know, and bring you into what we call I've heard it called the club of no return, and that's, boy, what it is. Because once you know they're there, you cannot unsee what you've seen, you cannot unexperience what you've experienced, and you can try to ignore it, but once you're a member of this club, you're a member forever. So just stick with it, and gradually things will start happening. And that's exactly how I tell people to do it. And since I started coming out with these videos, and most notably since my interview on the Flash of Beauty Bigfoot Revealed, which is up 118 or 119,000 views now, it's way up there. I've had quite a few people reach out to me, and I've got people that talk to me quite routinely, and we text back and forth and email back and forth, and they kind of tell me what they're doing, and I might give them a little suggestion here and there. And one of the folks I want to tell you about, I don't think this has gone too awful long, so let me add a couple of stories here. And one of the people that I've been dealing with on a pretty regular basis, and this fella I call my friend from Utah, and now he's pretty high up in the corporate world, and he doesn't want his name used, and I respect that. But he basically, we actually met face to face when I was up in Kanab, Utah, a few months ago, earlier this year. I was up there for a travel trailer rally, and he drove down from Salt Lake to meet with me. And since then, we've communicated quite regularly, and both texting back and forth and over the phone. And I just spoke with him over the phone today, and he told me about some developments that have happened with him. Now, he hasn't actually been even doing this long. He's been doing this for probably less than 6 months now. And he had a place that he was going that was about a 15-minute drive from his house. And I'm not going to tell you exactly where it was, because it's a pretty public area. But he would go just a little ways away from the public area, and he started getting a little bit of activity. If you hear an aircraft in the background, that's a big helicopter. We've got a fire ways north of us, and they're doing a pretty good air show on it right now. It's not really doing anything, but they're letting it expand to kind of turn it into a prescribed burn. But anyway, my friend picked this spot. He goes up there 2 or 3 times a week, and he's got his little routine, and he's tried all kinds of stuff. He's tried playing music, and he's tried reading the Bible to him, and lately now he's been reading Harry Potter to him, and they seem to like that. And but one of the things he hasn't had is he hadn't seen anybody yet. He'd gotten a little bit of mind speak, and he'd gotten the hello tingles, and they've let him know they were there. And one of the things that he's had quite a bit of is he's had quite a bit of activity regarding ravens. And earlier, if you watched my earlier videos, we've kind of been debating whether they can actually shapeshift, or whether they go on board and take control of the ravens, or what they do. But the Apaches say that the raven are the eyes of the hairy man, and we've experienced a lot of that ourselves. And I actually came eyeball to eyeball with a raven here about a block from my house one day when I was walking the dog, and when I asked if that was one of them on board the raven, I got zapped. He looked at me, as a big old raven all by himself, and he looked at me, he kind of turned his head sideways, and he zapped me. So that told me all I needed to do. I knew. So it's either one of them that shapeshifted into a raven, or it was one of them that somehow was taking control and operating the raven. And like I said once before, and somebody got a big laugh out of that, and I said, flying that old raven like a Cessna. But anyway, so he'd had quite a interesting variety of experiences, things that happened, and they'd left him stick structures, and they'd left him stacked rocks, and I did a video about the stacked rocks they left him. And well, he just recently he got pretty excited. They started showing up in the form of small birds at his house, and he got mind speak from one. And the mind speak he got, it turned out it was a female, and her name is Anfro, and she's 37 years old. And well, a little bit later, I guess 1 or 2 nights later, there was another one there, and he got mind speak from that one, and that one was he's a 43-year-old male, and his name is Rake. And a little bit later, another time, then Anfro was back, and she kind of gave him a visual of a raven sitting on a tree, and another raven flew up next to him, and he interpreted that as that they were mates. And so now he's got a middle-aged or fairly young Sasquatch couple that are both communicating with him via MindSpeak. And the way he does it is he meditates, and he finds out that and he actually has a app for his phone that helps him get into that meditative state. And I haven't really explored that with him about what it is or how that works, but that's how he does it. Well, anyway, he was out was either last night or night before last now, and when he was out at his spot, he catches movement out of the corner of his eye up in a tree. And he looks up there, and sure enough, he sees very, very clearly, he sees a distortion up in this tree. He said it was a long ways up there. He said it was kind of across the canyon from where he was at, but he said it was very obvious that it was a distortion, and it was moving. He described it as an oval, probably 4 feet tall and 2 feet wide. Well, so he contacts me when he gets back, and he says, "Could that have been one of them?" And I said, "Yeah, the oval distortions are something fairly common. We see that all the time. Sometimes we see the distortions in the absolute outline of the individual. And this last trip to Hilltop, I mentioned about seeing one walk right between me and my van was parked about 30 feet away from me, and it was as tall as the van. And my van's 9.5 feet tall. Well, that particular one, I could see his legs move. I could see he's kind of hunched forward a little bit as he walked. I did not notice the arm swing, but I noticed the shoulders and the head, and I could see it pretty clearly. Even though it was distorted, it was a distortion similar to the movie Predator, but it walked from the rear of my van to the front, which had been from my left to my right, and not in any big hurry, just kind of casually strolling. Well, what he saw kind of the oval distortion. He could see the movement. He could see the shimmering image, if you will. And he kind of turned away and then looked back, and it was gone. And so he wanted to know if that was possible that he saw one of them. And I said, yeah, I think that's probably what you saw. And so that was his first sighting. He's had a bit of mind speak here and there, and he's had him around quite a bit. And so let's fast forward to the next day or next evening or whatever. And one of the things he does, he's got a dog, and his dog sometimes has to get up and go outside in the middle of the night. And it's usually around 3 o'clock. And, there's a lot of people believe the veil is thinnest at 3 o'clock in the morning. And, I don't have any firsthand knowledge whether that's true or not, but it seems to make sense to me. So anyway, he told me that he took the dog out, and when the dog came back in, he laid back down. He was laying there awake and trying to go back to sleep, and he kind of entered into that meditative state to try to get back to sleep. And he said that one of them was there. I think if I remember correctly, it was Rake that was there. And so he asked Rake. He said, "Was that one of you? That the distortion I saw in the tree, was that one of you?" And Rake came back and said, "That was Lewis." "Oh wow, that was Lewis." Well, Lewis Lewis is obviously a young one, but it's another name. So now, within a period of like 3 days, he's gotten 3 names, and one of them are 2 adults and a young one, and the young one actually is able to see him. And so, fast forward to today, middle of the day. I spoke with him about this other stuff by phone this morning. Had a pretty lengthy phone call with him. And he texted me back just a couple hours ago. And he says, "You'll never believe what happened." He said, I was sitting there watching TV. He's watching a basketball game. And he feels the tingle. And so he, I guess he muted the basketball game, and he tried to enter into his meditative state a little bit, and he said, "Who's there?" "Lewis." "Lewis? Wow. Was that you up in the tree I saw?" "Yes." Well, first he asked, is everything all right? And didn't get an answer. And a lot of times that's pretty common, because if the answer is yes, the way they approach it is they just don't answer. So they'll give you a yes answer, but they don't very often give you a no answer. And that's been our experience. So he's asking me, he says, is everything all right? Yes. Was that you in the tree the other day? Yes. And he'd also told me about being accompanied by a couple of small birds that just kind of flew around him as he was hiking and land up ahead of him and sing at him and turn around and look at him. And he said, were you one of those birds? Yes. Who was the other one? Anfro. Well, we don't know for sure whether Anfro's his mother or not, but I assume that probably she is. So those two little birds was Anfro and Lewis. So anyway, he said it totally dumbfounded him. He had no idea what to do and how to pronounce and what to even ask. So he tried to make a little bit of small talk, and they don't usually hang around very long. But after this was over with, he texted me to tell me about it. He said, this was wild. In the middle of the day at his house. And so right after he did that, I was sitting there trying to think of what I should suggest that he ask him, because what he's done, and bless his heart, is he'll call me and he say, well, what do you think? And I suggest to do stuff. And he's pretty much taken every suggestion I've given him right down the line. And so far, an amazing percentage of it has worked. And in just a few short months that he's been doing this, he's got some really amazing progress. It's just incredible. And so I'm sitting there thinking, well, probably ask Lewis how old he is. And I just was thinking that I was going to ask him that. They were telling him to ask that. And I immediately got 9, real excited. So I'm pretty sure that Lewis is 9. And so I texted him back and told him that. And so that's all that stuff going on. It's just beyond cool. And my friend up there, he's learned to look out for subtleties. And there's some stuff that's just the little bitty things that each individual thing might not mean anything, but when you start stringing them together, and you've often heard me talk about connecting the dots, all of a sudden the picture starts to develop of what's going on. And that's exactly what's happening in his situation. And now he's carried it to the point where he's got contact, he's got names, they're coming to his house, and he's got the open mind, he's got the good heart, and he's making some just absolutely incredible progress. So I wanted to tell you all that as part of my 100th video, and I want to close up by adding one more little tidbit of something that happened yesterday as well. And if you watch my community page, and those of you that, let me put a little plug in for that, and if you don't watch my community page and you don't know how to access that, if you don't know how to access the home page, I notice a lot of people watch YouTube videos, but they don't know how to access somebody's home page. And the way you do that is you find a little round picture of me standing in front of the pine tree with the orange ponderosa pine bark in the background. And if you click on that picture, it'll take you to my home page. And the homepage across the top, it says My Life of Chaos. And that's kind of a play on words for crazy hobbies and offbeat stuff. And and if you go down on the banner there, right below the picture, that you'll see it'll say home, it'll say videos, shorts, podcast, playlist, community. Well, the shorts, of course, shorts are YouTube's version of TikTok, and community is YouTube's version of Facebook. And I post something there about every day. And I talked about doing my storytelling gig at Noli's yesterday. Well, there was a guy there who sat and listened to my presentation. In my presentation, I was talking about where the water goes, and it wasn't Bigfoot related at all. It had to do with hydrology and topography and where roads go and how the pioneers made their way around places, and talked about some of the deep canyons around here and some of the circuitous routes that the water goes in order to get down to the ocean, because there's places here where if you dump the water on one side of the street, it has a pretty direct route down to the Colorado River and the Gulf of Mexico. But if you dump your water on the other side of the street, it goes all the way up into northeast Arizona and all the way around through the Grand Canyon and back down that way to get there. So tried to make it interesting, hope I did. But there was a guy that sat through all that, and then after it was over with, I opened up to questions and answers, and he started asking a few questions about a couple of things he's interested in. But he's a professional. He's retired now, but he had a job that put him out in the field quite a bit. And I guess I can tell you, he was a geologist, and so he spent time in the field. And he said, you know, I said, I was out there an awful lot, and he says, I never really experienced anything, never saw anything, never really experienced anything. And so after we got there, we actually went out on the front porch out there in front of Noli's, and we stood and talked there for a while. And so I started asking him a couple of questions. I said, well, you know, have you ever been out in the field somewhere by yourself and all of a sudden had that overwhelming feeling that you were being watched? And he said, oh yeah, that was pretty common. So I said, well, to expand on that a little bit, have you ever been out there and maybe you started walking up a little side drainage or something to look at something and all of a sudden had this feeling that I shouldn't be here, I need to leave now? And he said, man, yeah, I've felt that. And finally he volunteered. He said, yeah, he said, and there was a couple times he said that I'd be out someplace and all of a sudden I get this real weird buzzy feeling down here in the back of my head, almost like electrical current. And I started laughing. I said, you know, all three of those things is classic Sasquatch behavior. They were reaching out to you. They were trying to contact you. You just didn't realize what was happening. So, you know, you may not have seen one in the flesh, but you've had many, many experiences. And, you know, he's still a little bit new to that subject, and I'm not sure whether he believes all that or not, but I sure gave him something to listen to think about. And I'm sure that he invited him to watch some more of the videos, and he'll probably watch this one. And he knows who he is. So I think this one's been kind of long. Like I said, it's my 100th video, and I can't believe I've talked about this many of them. I hope what I've told you today helps you, and I hope that if your goal is to make contact with the Sasquatch people, and you have a regular place to go, it takes a while. It's not going to happen overnight. But if you go out there and do it right, you know, don't take a camera, don't try to shine a bright light at them. You know, leave your guns in the car or at home, and go out there with an open mind and a good heart. You can make contact with them. They're there. And so I think I've probably done enough for right now. So as I always tell you, take care of each other and love each other. And it's a nice day here today. It's still a little toasty. It's around 90. And but there's a little bit of fall in the air. And so I'm going to let you go for now. And I guess there's nothing more to tell you then until we talk again. And I've got some other stories to tell you, but until we talk again, let me just tell you, peace out.